everyone, Ben Woodruff here with another falconry video. I apologize that I haven't had any content up for a while. I was in a car accident, left me with really bad damage to my spine and my neck and my back, and a concussion, gaboosh, that has had a lot of cognitive and memory issues that have been working through. So I haven't had a chance to produce anything, but getting back into things, and so wanted to share today a video on kind of the basics of getting a brand new falcon up and running, specifically a brand new falcon that is captive bred. So you think about, I know a lot of people watch this from all around the world, so different legalities and different ways of obtaining a falcon are different in different regions, and I understand that. But traditionally, you know, you might have a baby falcon, it's called an eyas. You might have a new eyas from the wild. You might have an eyas that is captive bred. That either of those scenarios, they might be imprinted. Or you might trap a passage, which is a first-year falcon that has left its parents. It's totally on its own, doesn't have a mate, and it knows what it's doing, but it's a wild bird. That's a passage, which is some of the things cross over, some of them don't. Or something like in this case, which is, what do you do if you have a captive bred bird that was parent raised? All right. So the falcon we're looking at today is one of my absolute favorite species, a Lanner falcon. Lanner falcons, of course, have a rich history in ancient Egypt, and those of you who watch my channel know that I'm in the works of doing a kind of an all-encompassing huge video on Lanner falcons, all things Lanner, and I'm collaborating with a lot of falconers in many different regions of the world. But I don't want to focus so much on the Lanner itself, as much as just kind of the first steps, and then in subsequent videos we'll take a look at the progress of this particular bird. Now, the breeder that I was making these arrangements with, and I'll check later on, and if she would like to be mentioned, then I will make sure that her name is mentioned. She's a very good breeder, and once the bird was a certain age, she doesn't like to ship them when they're too young. She likes to ship them when they're a bit older. So this falcon is a few months old, and it has been parent raised. This is an important thing to consider when you start your training, because remember, that bird has been fed by its parents. So even though it might be the full size of a passage falcon, it doesn't know how to hunt or how to properly feed itself because it's used to parents from above taking a piece of meat, giving it, taking a bite-sized piece of meat and giving it. So two things, it's used to being fed the proper size, and it's used to the image of an adult falcon moving towards it. Not a hand, not a glove, not a huge chunk of meat, and certainly not legitimate prey. So you kind of had to have a strange blank slate. So taking a look at this Lanner falcon, he came in great shape, and I was fortunate that the breeder was such a wonderful person that she put extra effort and put several days into the training herself before shipping, starting the basics of putting on anklets on the legs and starting the manning process. She even had her apprentice help with this, starting to feed small tidbits of meat to this wonderful falcon. Now, one of the first things I love to do is give a quick check over the feet. And of course, this video is being made after I've had this bird for a couple days now, and but still I wanted to kind of demonstrate some of this. So looking at these feet, Lanner falcons, remember, are a desert species. So their toes are not as long as, say, a peregrine falcon or an orange-breasted falcon. Those are the two falcon species with just insanely long toes. Lanner falcons do hunt a lot of birds, and kind of the sweet spot seems to be quail, doves, pigeons, sand grouse, and partridge. That's kind of what they like to hunt in the wild bird-wise. They'll hunt smaller, of course, and they can hunt bigger. I've hunted ducks with them, but that's kind of the range that they really take a lot of. But in many of their regions, they're also hunting gerbils, which we think of in America in terms of pet stores, but it's a wild animal, looks very close to a kangaroo rat. And also a lot of reptiles, including Egyptian Euromastix lizards. It's one thing that they regularly hunt. So if you know your big falcons, normally the way falcons hunt birds, longer toes works better for catching a bird out of the air. Shorter, thicker toes is better for subduing something that could turn around and bite you back like a rodent. And so we see, like on sakers and on lanners, on prairie falcons, usually we kind of have shorter toes, which just fine. They can still hunt birds. But taking a look at this little fellow, looking at his feet, he has very good-looking feet for a male Lanner falcon. A lot of times that we call a male Lanner a Lanneret. If I go in and out of that during this video, I apologize. Just depending on who I'm talking to, I'm used to using different vocabulary. But the Lanneret, or the male Lanner, often has very stumpy feet. This bird has not quite as big as a peregrine, but really good toes. Now the claws, the talons, of course, are going to get thicker and stronger and more robust with age, but the toes themselves are full size, and these are broader when spread out than the shoulders, which are technically the wrist, but what we call the shoulders of the bird, looking up. Those are big. Those are big. So these are good feet. These are good game hawking feet, good hunting feet. So I'm happy about that. Taking a look at some of the other features of this bird, all falcons have long, skinny wings compared to other birds. And this Lanner has the expected and anticipated longer than normal primaries that are a hallmark of all Lanners. But he also has insanely long secondaries. This is normal for the species, but it's something to note. If you have a peregrine falcon or you look at pictures of peregrines, notice that these same secondaries do not come down as far. This is kind of one of the hallmarks of the species. Having longer secondaries makes you more buoyant. It gives you a lower wing loading. And sometimes that is put down by traditional long-wingers who are hunting from a stoop, from a pitch, and where it's like, okay, this bird, I want it to dive, and a buoyant bird that has less mass for its wing size is considered to be not as good of a hunter. But as you'll see in later videos, and what I'll demonstrate and talk about, is Lanners have a very mixed bag of tricks and of hunting techniques. They're not a one-trick pony. It's not like I go up, everybody who's seen my channel knows, if you're just to do a blanket statement of what do I think is the ultimate game hawk in general terms, falcon-wise, is a peregrine. If you're saying big falcons, what's the big falcon? Peregrine. But Lanners have a very unique place. Some people rip on them, some people love them, but they have that mixed bag, and those longer secondaries that give them the buoyancy actually allows them to pull off some of these neat tricks in hunting that would be difficult for a peregrine to do. So even though I salute my peregrines as being these amazing gods of the falcon world, just incredible hunters, and in general say they outperform, at the end of the day, you can have a great old time hunting with a Lanner. Now, looking at the head, we're taking the hood off. The beak is as we expect. The beak is still growing. It'll get thicker, and throughout life will need to be coped. Coping is where you, with files, or I use a Dremel, which is an electric rotary tool, and trim and shape the beak so when it becomes overgrown. There's a bit of an art to it. I do have some videos on my channel of this, but this particular bird, as we get, 5, 6, 7 months into the season, I'll show, and we can compare his beak now to here in the future and show how we keep that trimmed up. But right now, it's important to remember that even though this baby, this young falcon is full-sized, he's still kind of delicate. And especially any hard tissue on the outside of the body. The beak, the cere, the talons, they're still growing, and even though they're full size, their density is not what it will be, even a month from now. And so as we take a look around, his hood is a good fitting hood, but you notice also on one side, there's a little bit of an abrasion. This is to be expected at this age, but also not acceptable. And so this is something on my end that when we take a look at this, we say, okay, what is causing this minor abrasion? If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always gotten. And if the hood is rubbing even a little bit there, and you keep using the same hood unaltered, that tiny abrasion can turn into a problem for that bird. We don't want that. So the simplest approach to this is take a look what the hood is on the inside of where that beak opening goes around the cere, is to take a pocket knife and on the inside to rough up the leather, which softens it, but it also makes it more pliable. So not only are you removing material and softening it up, but also bending it out a little bit. And then this is crucial, especially at this young age where their skin is softer, to keep a strong eye and make sure that the hood has been adjusted enough so that any abrasive action happening there is not going to be a long-term problem and will heal up very quickly. This stage of training that this early part is what we call manning, which I've heard it defined different ways, but basically manning is training your bird to sit on your fist, and more importantly, if the bird jumps off of the fist, to get back up. Now, one of the keys to manning is to have the jesses tight, pulled tight, but not so tight that they inhibit the bird. If those jesses are too loose, then when the bird jumps or baits, it can't get up easily. If they're a little bit loose, the bird can jump, get back up, and then you pull it. And you can see him back that you want that little bit of looseness. One of the things about a captive bred bird, most captive bred birds, depending on the breeding facility, but haven't had a lot of flight experience and definitely not a lot of landing experience. Fluttering from one side of a breeding chamber to another is not the same as a full passage bird. And so very often when a bird baits, a captive bred, parent reared, 2 or 3 month old bird is going to bait differently than a passage bird. But either way, the same thing sort of applies, which is if you have the jesses pulled to the right level, they should be able to get up on their own with relative ease. And after only a few times of seeing this, they understand what's going on, and just like a cat that'll get spooked and then settle down, if a bird gets spooked in baits, it'll get back up and settle down, fluff up its feathers, and you make sure the jesses are pulled correctly. If you need to help them, this Lanner is already doing so well, I don't have the opportunity to show you, but if they jump and hang, first of all, you probably have the jesses a little too loose, a little too much slack in the jesses and the leash, but you can help them up from the chest, back up, or if they go backwards, same thing. Help them back up gently, very, very carefully, and make it a simple, quick experience for them. Okay, that's very important to do that without being spastic yourself. You just have to make sure that you are calm about how you do this. So I want to mention too, many people forget this, but when you have a good perch, a good block perch, or and you have your bird tied to that perch, every time it jumps and then gets back up, it is manning itself. Now, I know a perch is not a glove, but it's the same principle. Oh, okay. So don't underestimate that as a useful part of this manning process. Now, remember, food is where social bonding comes in with our raptors. Any raptor, any sort of a bond related to food, that is going to build trust. It's the language of trust that a raptor can understand. All other animals want to kill you and take away your food, except for your mate and your parent temporarily. Now, if you watch my other videos, obviously different birds, different species, different family groups, different ages, your approach to food is going to be different. But at this early stage, remember, we are talking about a captive bred, parent reared falcon. So we need, for those three things, that kind of bird, we're trying to train them to eat off of the fist. Now, in the wild, other animals don't go handing you food. And this is a parent reared, so this bird has only seen parents from above leaning down and offering the right sized amount of food. Some birds instantly pick it up. You're holding them on the glove, you hand a piece of meat, and they're like, oh, okay, come. Some don't. Some I will try at first to catch their attention. If they're just flipping out, looking all over the place, and they're oblivious to food, then I will hold it up a little bit above, which is where food should appear. And they're like, huh? And they're like, wait, what? And they'll go. Now, again, this particular bird had a few days of practice having tidbits from the breeder and her apprentice. So that was very helpful, but still the first few days I was doing from above. Then I go to the middle, and then I try to start bringing it down below. Remember that these birds don't know what they're doing yet. They don't know how to hunt. A bird in this, captive bred, parent reared, baby doesn't know what it's doing. It doesn't know how to tear apart a meal. It doesn't know how to catch a meal. That's going to come later. I'll show you that in later videos. But also, it's summer. It's ridiculously hot. The bird's not that hungry, and the weight management, I haven't cut weight very much yet. And so, for a bird in this scenario, it might take a few bites and then bleh, and just drop it. And you're like, what is your problem? It seems counterintuitive, where, in nature, food is so important. And they're like, name, bleh, and keep dropping it. And when I was trying to film this little Lanner, he did that several times, where thanks for the food, and then he'd drop it. But eventually, you bring that meat down. When you get them to show interest, then you bring it down to their feet, and you hold it at their feet, and they start pulling. Now, some birds are so good that they will instantly grab it with their feet. They instinctively know. Some don't. My male wild Utah taken peregrine jettifray that some of you have seen on my other videos, beautiful red chest. He's such a wonderful bird. At this stage with him, he would hold it like a little kestrel catching a grasshopper. He would take it and he'd stand on one foot and in the other hold it, and he had the hardest time. What you ideally want to get your bird to be able to do is to learn to put, you got these three toes, put this talon down and this talon down, impaled into the food to pull against is what you want them to be doing. That's what you're trying to help them to do. So this stage, when I bring that food down to this Lanner's feet, I'm holding it where I want to teach him how to be an adult. So he's eating, he's pulling up, and that's good. And then what I'm doing, he has not yet figured out. And so while I'm doing that, I'll take a finger and move one of his toes over, and hopefully both of his toes over to where he's impaling with those two inner talons. And once he does that, then he can pull with ease and tear apart his food. And that works really well. And, within a day or two of that, then you can help them and they'll just learn, I'm supposed to put my toes down. Now, one of the things is at this stage, sometimes if you're doing a bigger piece of meat, right? You're not doing tidbits. You start with tidbits, but then you're going to a bigger piece of meat, and they might go, all I've ever done has been handed food by mom and dad, and they're trying to wolf it down. If they're eating too big of a piece, pull it out. They don't know what they're doing. You don't want them to choke or have issues. Pull it out, put it down below. And I do not know why this is. With falcons, it seems, most animals, if an animal is taking too big of food, any predator, if you're training a bobcat or training a dog or an eagle, whatever, most animals, predatory animals, if they're trying to eat something and you look like you're going to take it or literally do start to take it, then they double down on that idea of, no, I will eat it all at once. Blah. Falcons aren't that way. I don't know why. If they're eating something too big and you're like, nope, and you take it back, then they're like, okay. And then they start being more willing, often, to take bite-sized pieces. Kind of strange. Don't know why it's so different than hawks and eagles and stuff, but it's just how they are. One of the things, this is in a lot of my other videos too, but is scratching their toes. I haven't had to do this much with this bird, but if they are being overly distracted while you're trying to have them eat, which again is normal because they're young and dumb, they don't know, everything's new to them, and it's hot, and they're not hungry, so it's like, But if they have their feet where they should be on that food, scratch their toes. Just kind of scrape with your nail along the scales of the toe, and they're like, right, that food down there, that's what I'm supposed, yes, what? Scratch. Oh, yeah. And just do that. It's very easy. And again, I haven't had to do that with him. I've had more trouble of getting him to understand to hold down his own food. Okay. So those are just kind of the first basics. I'm going to show more of this. The next stages, of course, we're going to go more into the other steps of like how to tear apart food, how to fly to the fist, and then how to transition from eating off the fist to the lure. But remember, I have a video on feeding off the fist and how it's a blessing or a curse, and how it can be really dangerous and cause aggression in birds. When it comes to falcons, especially non-imprint falcons, I have basically no worry about feeding a falcon off the fist. Of course, very quickly you got to transition to things that can be seen from the distance. Swinging a leather lure, Bird can see that a lot further off than you with food on your glove. Come here. But that's not what it's about. Feeding off the fist with this falcon is about building trust. And at this age, this is just a natural progression. Oh, I hatched, eyes were closed, and I heard chirping from mom, I was fed, and then I opened my eyes, and then I saw, and then I had these people feeding me, and now I'm eating off the fist. Now I'm tearing food off the fist, hopping to the fist, flying to the fist, flying to the lure for meat, flying to an empty lure, up to a garnished fist, and then, it's step by step by step is what we have to go through with all this. Now, part of this process too, birds at this age are often very unsettled before eating. So if you're doing the manning process, holding them, teaching them to jump up, they might be, that's kind of to be expected. Once they've eaten, they're a lot more settled down. One of the important training things that I do after eating is helping them know how to get up and down off a perch. I did an entire video just off of how to properly save the bird's tail when you're putting them on a perch. But remember that there's a natural way to, when you approach a perch, you rock your fist and the bird's tail goes up and you let the back of the legs touch the perch, they step backwards, okay? On a young bird like this, where they're still getting their balance, default to the early setting when you yourself are learning how to have a bird perch, which is put your hand under the tail as you approach a perch, lift up the tail, let the back of the legs touch the perch, and then continue to drop your fist down as they back up onto the perch. And for getting them up, I usually recommend grabbing the leash and gently sliding up and then putting your fist so that they can get up. The reason is sometimes a new parent-raised captive bred bird, you approaching with a fist is abrupt and they spaz. Well, if they spaz and you have too much slack in a leash, then any training you have made, any progress you have made with the baiting and helping them get back up, you've kind of lost. Not completely lost, but you've kind of lost it. So if you pull up to the right level, then they know, oh, I just hop up, and if they do bait, they get right back up. And it's not a big deal. And it's just fine. So the last thing I want to put about on this video is the importance of socializing. This is so crucial. Any falconer knows it, but it isn't emphasized enough. You cannot say enough about emphasizing this principle, because you want a bird that is rock solid. Now, not everybody does. I won't name names, but I know a couple falconers, old timers and mentors of mine, who are some of the most respected falconers in the world, that they don't care about overly socialized birds. They're just like, hey, is my bird going out there hunting and bringing home a lot of game when we go out hunting? Cool. Then if it has kind of a wild edge to it, I'm fine. So I acknowledge you can have a wonderful falconry bird that's a wonderful hunter and it isn't overly socialized. But I just want to perpetuate how wonderful it is to have a bird that when it's on the ground, on a kill, on the lure, that you can jump over it and it doesn't care. That a dog can bark at it, a semi can go past it, somebody shoots a cannon next to him, an airplane goes overhead. It doesn't matter. Your bird's like, yes, and I'm with him, so I don't care. So at this age, once you have a few good days of them eating off the fist, like, take them everywhere. Take them everywhere you can. If you can bring them to work and it's an appropriate situation to do so, do so. You're watching TV, bring them with, sit them there. Every night, this Lanner falcon, I'm sitting on my couch watching documentaries and I have them on my fist, sitting on my knee. But remember, if you're doing that kind of thing, watch the tail, watch the tail, watch the tail. Make sure that anywhere you are resting your arm, that tail is not jamming into something. Otherwise, you're a moron. It happens to us all in the early days. So watch the tail, okay? But you have that bird out everywhere, everything. Don't stress it out, but help it feel safe. Help it feel confident. Get your hand up by the face. Touch the beak gently. Let the bird learn, oh, geez, I can kind of nibble at this finger. It's not food. And take away biting and you've seen on my channel, there's a video specifically on teaching raptors not to bite. But again, having your hand, you can pet your bird too, but having the hand on the feet, near, around, having you around, anything you can do to normalize anything and everything so that bird becomes rock solid. Remember, raptors, as much as we love their power and their majesty, they can fly, they're noble predators, great. They may be on the top of the food chain if they're above, but there's a lot of things that want to kill them and do. And they know that instinctively. And so the default setting of all raptors is react. Fight or flight, typically flight. React, react, react. Bah, bah. You know, a bird that reacts fast and skittishly is a bird that's going to live in the wild. Well, this bird isn't in the wild. This is a captive bred bird that I'm training, and it will be flying wild and free, hunting wild and free, but it's spending most of its time with me. And so I don't want a skittish bird. I want a bird that feels safe, that feels relaxed, that feels calm, that feels balanced, and has been socialized and acclimated to everything. So do that. Remember, give your bird in this process when you're doing that. If you're around commotion, if you're around people, it is wise to, behind and to the side of your bird, have an imaginary retreat. And your bird's on a leash. You're just still training it on the fist. But you need that imaginary retreat. A falcon can handle quite a bit of commotion and action going on in front of it if behind it there is some space to where its brain's like, I'm not backed up against a metaphoric or real wall. So make sure that if you are doing something where there's a lot of commotion at this early stage, make sure that behind the falcon, the commotion is little to non-existent. And that bird will be much more mellow. One more thing. I keep thinking of things. It's hot, okay? And remember, the default setting of a falcon is react, react, react. Especially with gyr falcons. This is so bad. Gyr falcons, they just freak out sometimes. And just like thinking of all of them. Water can be your friend. Spraying under the wings, get a little spray bottle, or they have those little pump sprayers, right? Something like that. And if your bird keeps freaking out and baits and isn't getting up, and it's bird's starting to get hot. Okay, spray down the feet because the feet are bare. So evaporative effects, that's going to cool down those feet. That helps the body temperature come down to the bird. But also getting water under the wings, they're like, oh. And it can reset the brain. It absolutely can. And that's good heavens. With captive bred, parent reared gyr falcons, I don't think I've ever had a female gyr under those circumstances that I could have ever manned without using water, because they just elevate themselves to this freaking out status. This Lanner's been a gem, but still the first couple of days he was in reaction mode. I'm like, hey, okay, just spray a little water underneath each wing, get nice and wet. You can drench under there, and they're just like, oh, and it cools them down, calms them down, but again, more importantly, it switches the brain from react to think. What's going on here? What am I? Okay, all right. I'm on this leash. We can get back up. Okay, food. I like food. All right, this guy's all right. He's touching me. Okay, and so remember that as a tool of the trade, a little trick that can really help you in that first stage of helping a bird understand what the program is all about. Okay. So I hope this little first video on this Lanner falcon is useful and moderately entertaining to you. And again, I apologize for the delay of getting any content out for a while now, but car accident, no fun. So be watching. Coming weeks, I'll have more and more videos on this little guy. Working on a name right now. I'm sure I will give him some obnoxious ancient Egyptian name that will be hard to pronounce. I'm sure that's the route I'll go because of the rich history that Lanner falcons have. But if you haven't already, please hit subscribe. Feel free to share these videos around. And as always, happy hawking.